Hello, dear colleagues. I'm glad to join you today in the second week of Programmatic Assessment Track 2. Myself, Hamza Magdi, and my colleagues, Dr. Christina Alphonse, Dr. Iman Sweet, Dr. Ashraf Sherbini, and Dr. Manal Abul Khair, and our great advisor, Dr. Abu Ubaida Yassin. By the end of this week, we should be able to apply the programmatic assessment in your medical school, in your context, and we will explain together the challenges you may face during implementation of programmatic assessment. So keep with us. Sometimes the word programmatic assessment gives us an impression that it's just a ready-made package. It's like the instructions given with the IKEA package. It's not true. It's always about the system and your context, the system you are applying the programmatic assessment in, and the context you are gonna apply in. So it's not about the system itself, it's about the principles we had gone through the previous week. Like our candidate here, he took the IKEA box with the instructions and the instruments, but he used it in his own context. He get a product and he seemed so satisfied with the product here. So that's how it looks about the programmatic assessment. You take the tools and you take the instructions, the principles, and you can use it however you need to use, or however you can put in your context or your department or your course. We can divide the implementation of programmatic assessment into 4 phases. Phase 1, the theory, then designing, then the implementation, and phase 4 is the evaluation. We will start by phase 1, as we said, which is the theory. Like we had determined the goals of our curricula on key competencies basis, maybe on a problem based, maybe on a theme based, like that of emergency and family medicine and so on. Whatever is the objectives of your curriculum or your course, we have to define it clearly. This is the first step. The second step would be defining the programmatic assessment goals. You should define what you need to get from the programmatic assessment, what you need your graduate to be fulfilled in. So you all know that objectives should be specific, measurable, and achievable, but we have to concentrate on that. In programmatic assessment, we need limited number of cornerstones or backbones to avoid the fragmentation of the programmatic assessment. So even if you have much key competencies, you have to decrease it or reduce it to a limited number, and the rest of the key competencies you can use it in the activities, in the ILOs, your outcomes out of this backbone. Also, the assessment or the programmatic assessment should be based on the profession, on what you need your graduate to be able to do as a doctor, not as a student. Phase 2 is designing your programmatic assessment. In this phase, we are selecting our assessment tools. We have a package of assessment tools that are increasing every day almost. So we have to choose the proper tool from this package in order to assess a certain skill, a certain piece of knowledge. And always remember that it's assessment for learning, not of learning. That means that you have to evaluate the learning process as long as it's going on. So we have different data points and multiple data points for the student or for the candidate. We have also to establish clear assessment criteria for each tool, which means we have to set the magnitude or the value of each tool we are using. All data points have to focus on feedback, not only the assessment, not a fail or pass decision. The student have to get a feedback and a time for remediation to improve himself. Sometimes we say that we have to make this data point or this assessment to be repeated in order to try himself back again and get sure that he have learned something and he had improved in a certain point. He have to take the chance to do this. So it's a continuous dialogue about these data points. The student get assessed and then he get the feedback, and we need his own feedback as well, his reflection to what has gone on. The mentorship also has a great role in this process. Each student should have a mentor who could evaluate him closely, and he may have or play a great role in the assessment process. Even in the high-stake decisions, we said that in high-stake decisions, there is a bunch or a group of prestigious professors who should take this high stock decisions. So the mentor of the student himself could be a part of this team. The stock decisions, the more expertise is needed also. So the high stake decisions need multiple points and multiple times and multiple professors, and those professors should have a good experience in how to evaluate this much data. Because we are collecting a lot of data, we need someone who can look through and get a conclusion and should be experienced in such point. The third phase is the implementation phase. We always advise that application of programmatic assessment should be on a narrow scale. In a faculty program, maybe a module or one course, we consider it is a pilot study. So, do you think that we have to deconstruct of old habits and certainties to apply our programmatic assessment? So what do you think? Shall we deconstruct everything? Shall we ruin everything we had and start from the beginning? The good news is no. Calm down. So you shouldn't do that. So you shouldn't deconstruct everything you had. You may focus on the components you already have and start from within, focusing on specific components of programmatic assessment that can realistically embedded in existing organizational structure. You should start from what you already have. Small scale without disturbing existing structure would guarantee you a higher impact and a higher success for programmatic assessment design or programmatic assessment project. It can help success of broader and larger scale as well. So try it in a narrow scale for the beginning. One of the important steps as well in the implementation of programmatic assessment is the faculty development. Programmatic assessment implementation require a change in the mindset of all stakeholders, the students, their families, the faculty members, the community, the needs of the community itself. So all the stakeholders should have a change in their mindset in order to apply this programmatic assessment, and this is a challenge. Capacity building for change. Teacher and student should be trained for the new rules they are having. Student is not just a recipient. He's now a feedback giver, a reflection giver. He has his ownership for his assessment methods and the artifacts he is assessed for. The teacher is not just a giver, he's a feedback giver, he's a mentor, he's assessor in a different way. Not only faculty and staff need to be trained to the new assessment tool, but also we should pay attention what drives people in assessment and education, their behavior, their norms, their beliefs. This is very important points in we should consider during implementation of programmatic assessment. Actually, commitment building might be the most difficult part of implementation. Phase 4 is the evaluation. We had agreed in the beginning that programmatic assessment is a dynamic process. We have to evaluate ourselves, redesign, and reconstruct. Evaluation here means continuous monitoring and adjustment of the implementation process. After the assessment program implementation, it's crucial to evaluate its effectiveness of ongoing process. This can be done through regular faculty and student feedback, followed by data analysis, and probably followed by actions and redesigning. So to summarize, our programmatic assessment shall start by defining curriculum objectives, followed by defining programmatic assessment itself objectives, followed by selection of the assessment tools and establishing clear assessment criteria, then followed by the implementation of a pilot study and the faculty development, and finally the evaluation of the program. So the programmatic assessment can take us down and up and down and up. It's like a roller coaster. You can start from here and upwards, and from upward to downwards. And that's what we should remember from our roller coaster. The successful implementation of programmatic assessment requires either a top-down or a bottom-up approach in which all key stakeholders are involved and collaborate in the change process. And now I will leave you with my dear colleague Christina Alphonse to take you in a journey with the challenges you may face during implementation of your programmatic assessment.
Thanks, Dr. Hamza, for this lovely presentation. Welcome, everybody. I hope you are blessed with your comfort. I am Christina Alphonse, and I will be honored to discuss with you some of challenges of programmatic assessment. As we know, programmatic assessment is a paradigm in medical education and evaluation. So, accordingly, we will face the idea or the challenge of novelty and unknown. Systems and structures may be unsupportive with resistance to change. The faculty and the student may resist change in assessment practice, especially that it is a paradigm, a change in the deep beliefs. This change needs the core implementer or the knowledge broker, the one who is able to convince the stakeholders how to be engaged in application of programmatic assessment, especially that programmatic assessment needs extensive micro-planning to provide the plan of the whole academic year just before the start of the year. This knowledge broker should use what is called the strategic opportunism, which means that he makes sure that be sure that he has the support of the leaders, the authorized personnel. He is able to act through his contacts and is able to convince the whole stakeholders. After convincing or engaging the stakeholders in this program, then the second challenge will be to avoid trivialization or bureaucracy. Once the assessment instrument and strategy is more important than the original goal, which is assessment for education as well as learning, as well as decision making to make the best in all of these, then the trivialization will show its ugly face. The ugly face will appear when we see the ready-made reflections on the website just to copy and paste for the students in their portfolios, or when the teachers are just completing their forms without any meaning. This means that there is lack of training. Once the actors, the whole panel, the whole actors are in programmatic assessment are trained how they are doing this, what they are doing, why they are doing, and why they are doing this in this way, then trivialization will be overcome. The other challenge in programmatic assessment, which is deep-seated in programmatic assessment as it is reflection to the competency-based education or the educational approach used, is subjectivity. Subjectivity depends on the assessor own personal knowledge, experience, beliefs, and opinions, which means that it may be personal dependent rather than something evidence-based. But still, assessment is an ability to be acquired and not an innate one, through training, of course. Then, what is the importance of subjectivity, or why we are considering subjectivity as a challenge in programmatic assessment? Because it is a mandatory way of evaluation or assessment in a competency-based education, as some of the domains of the competency-based education can be assessed through numerical values. Some are dependent on the observation and feedback, so subjectivity is important in programmatic assessment. Still, subjectivity in assessment can be avoided, as we mentioned, but so it should be recognized, adopted, and used, keeping all the checks to maintain validity and meaning, as well as evidence to be discussed. Through assessor training on assessment program, then the assessor should be able or will be aware about his own bias, his own abilities, and his own limitation. I think all of us know the story of the blind people who probed different parts of the elephant. Everyone, through his ideas and through his senses, suggested that it may be something different than an elephant. But when they all combined their data, they were able to do a right suggestion. This is the same idea here in programmatic assessment. In spite of that, all assessment methods by its own in a separate way is not completely valid or reliable, but combining multiple encounters through multiple assessors and in multiple settings will make the whole programmatic assessment reliable and valid. Other challenge in programmatic assessment is triangulation. In medical education, triangulation means that we have to combine narrative data with numerical values. As triangulation means to combine different data from different assessment methods according to the content. Which means that in an OSCE exam, for example, we assessed for communication skills and for medical knowledge. Other assessment we used, we assessed the communication skills as well. So we'll combine data on communication skills in the first assessment method with the other one, and finally give the score or give the data point on communication domain. This is difficult in medical education because it combines both numerical and narrative data. The same idea or the same reflection for this challenge is data compilation. Data compilation means that we are obliged to collect data for the whole number of students on huge amount of data points on different domains through different assessment points, different assessment approaches. But thanks to smart technology, ePortfolio is a very, very good suggestion for data compilation and to overcome triangulation, but still it needs an experience. During Ottawa conference, some of the expertise suggested the challenge of psychological safety in teaching and working environment. Sometimes learner can perceive low-stake assessment as high-stake ones, and the program or the programmatic assessment is made to be applied on a longitudinal scale, on a continuous scale for different domains at different times through different assessors. So it may be very anxious. The student may be very anxious through the whole years, but this is not the aim of programmatic assessment. As the aim of programmatic assessment is to focus on learning without considering consequences, at least for the low-stake ones. So supportive relationship with peers and mentors can help to overcome this psychological disturbance. And on the other side as well, which is very, very important and should be stressed upon on training of the stakeholders, is the constructive feedback. Feedback must be constructive, otherwise it will be disheartening. Constructive feedbacks has many rules. One of them is to make positive and negative data as well in a good way, in a friendly manner, and by the end of the feedback, the student is not disappointed, but he has a plan in his mind how to proceed for the further steps. One of the challenges which is now obvious is the reflection and self-monitoring. It has been recognized that it's important for professional development and performance. This doctor, the graduated one, should be able to know what the points he is defective in and to improve himself without exams as well. This should be applied during the teaching years. But when the instrumental and mandatory approach is the leading one for the student, then he will put meaningless reflections. This can be overcome through the training and the convince of the to convince the student that this is for his own building and this is for his own benefit. So he's not comparable with his colleagues. He's not asked to be mastering everything in every point. Here comes the costs and resources. Of course, programmatic assessment may be costly rather than traditional methods, especially it needs big number of staff and expertise, frequent assessment setting, but we can use some strategies to decrease this cost, like less is more principle. We know that programmatic assessment depends on collecting data to reach a decision at the end. Then we have to put in mind that every single data should be meaningful. No need for a repetition of data that gives no new information. This is one point. One of the expertise suggested that we can apply the new application of programmatic assessment can be through different or limited sectors of the program, and mentoring should be applied in could be applied in limited sectors of the program till we are able to apply it all through. Other point we can use is economic compromise, like using online question banks that the student can assess himself and give you the reflection, provided it's an honest one. Also, we can use peer reviews. It's not a must to make an exam setting for every domain, but we can use peer assessment for certain professional qualities like professionalism or communication. Still, if it is still costly, we have to put in mind that now assessment is not just for evaluation. Assessment in its native language means that to sit to the student, which means that to make the student learn. And if we think education is expensive, try ignorance. These are some discussed and studied data or on challenges, but still there are more and more challenges to be overcome through application of programmatic assessment. I hope I can hear about your reflection on how to apply on or solve some of these challenges in your own context. And thank you.